Picture a Soviet factory manager. He's standing there proudly presenting a massive, completely useless 500-pound nail, while his workers just totally ignore the thousands of normal-sized nails scattered around them. Why on earth would anyone actually do this? Well, it's because the central plan rewarded the factory based on the weight of their production, not its usefulness. When a system measures the absolute wrong thing, highly rational people are going to produce completely absurd results. Welcome to today's explainer on the Soviet nail paradox and the sheer absurdity of metrics. Seriously, why would a factory intentionally dedicate all of its resources to making a single gigantic iron spike? Honestly, because their bonuses, their livelihoods, and literally their physical safety depended entirely on it. The central planners in Moscow demanded weight, so the factory gave them weight. Okay, let's dive into this, because this story opens up the wild world of Soviet economic incentives, and it actually reveals a terrifying trap that modern companies still fall into today.
Section 1. Why targets mattered. The planning dilemma.
Now, before we just mock the outcome of this giant nail, we really have to understand the immense dilemma that central planners in Moscow were facing. I mean, they weren't setting out to fail. To coordinate production across this incredibly huge country without the guiding hand of market prices, the Soviets had to rely on a super strict hierarchical chain of command. You had broad national goals set by the top leadership, right? Then these were broken down into long-term perspective plans. You've probably heard of the famous 5-year plans. And finally, those broad goals were distilled into highly specific operational quotas for thousands of individual enterprises. The State Planning Committee, which was known as Gosplan, had to orchestrate all of this from the top down. We're talking ministries, factories, transport, consumer goods, the whole shebang.
To actually make this work, Gosplan used a system called material balancing. This basically meant accounting for material supplies in physical units, so tracking literal tons of steel, kilowatts of electricity, and tons of coal, to try and make sure that the supply of basic inputs perfectly matched the targeted outputs across the entire Soviet Union. It was a massive computational headache. And remember, this was largely done manually, before modern computers, just trying to balance supply and demand for an entire nation on paper.
Section 2. The problem of measuring success. The flaw in the numbers. Ask yourself, how does a central government actually measure success across such an incredibly complex system, especially when there are millions of different products? Well, planners had to rely on gross output targets. They measured success in tons of steel, meters of cloth, or the sheer number of shoes. But while these metrics were really easy to count on paper, they completely failed to measure real value. Things like quality, utility, timing, or, actual consumer demand. And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue. This rigid focus on hitting numerical targets led to what we can call the socialist vice, prioritizing plan fulfillment over real usefulness. The results were pretty severe. It led to a massive overproduction of large, heavy items and chronic shortages of specific consumer goods. Quality just plummeted because factories were always in a total rush. This distortion hit heavy machinery, furniture, shoes, spare parts, construction, you name it. It also led to crazy resource misallocations. For example, because the state fixed the price of bread so incredibly low, it was sometimes literally used as animal feed. Crazy, right?
Section 3. The nail quota paradox. A Soviet parable.
Let's use a famous factory parable to bring these abstract problems to life. Here's how the story goes. If a central planner judged a nail factory's output purely by quantity, so the sheer number of nails, the factory manager would switch the machines to produce millions of microscopic needle-like pins just to hit the quota super quickly. But you can't exactly build a house with pins. So if the planner realized that mistake and changed the target to be measured by weight instead, the factory would just retool again. Instead of millions of tiny nails, they would pour all their iron into producing one massive 500-pound iron spike. They met the quota perfectly and created absolutely zero value.
Now, the point here is not whether one specific anecdote explains the entire Soviet economy, but rather what it reveals about incentives. As the source material notes, the system incentivized pointless increases in the size, weight, and cost of production outputs simply because more equaled success. This distorted production literally across the board.
Section 4. The ratchet effect. Hiding true capacity.
Now, you might be wondering, why wouldn't a factory manager just make the right amount of normal nails efficiently and call it a day? Well, because of a terrifying phenomenon known as the ratchet effect. This is the tendency of managers to actively understate their true productive capacity. Why? Because they knew for a fact that if their factory actually exceeded its target, the central planners would just ratchet up their quotas for the next year. It created this incredibly perverse incentive to hide true capacity, hoard raw materials, understate potential, and actively avoid overperforming at all costs.
And this intense fear of the plan led to another really destructive practice called storming, or Storm of China. Because supply chains were constantly bottlenecked and inputs were almost always delayed, factories would literally sit idle for weeks. And then, they'd frantically rush to complete the bulk of their monthly quota in the final few days of the planning cycle. The quality dropped so drastically during this panicked rush that Soviet citizens actually tried to avoid buying major items if they knew they were manufactured late in the month.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the economic growth divergence between these countries over time. The Soviet system's heavy reliance on gross targets actually did drive massive early industrialization, pulling a peasant economy rapidly into the industrial age back in the 1930s, but ultimately, it led to total stagnation. As the economy matured and just grew way more complex, millions of product variations simply overwhelmed the planners. The ratio of good decisions to bad decisions started falling rapidly.
Section 5. The bargaining game. Rational actors.
It's absolutely crucial that we balance this story. The managers churning out these absurd products were not stupid, and they weren't evil. They were highly rational actors responding to the rules around them. They were caught in a classic principal-agent problem. The principal, in this case Moscow, wants a useful outcome, like, houses actually being built. But the agent, the factory manager, wants maximum reward with minimum effort based strictly on the rules they were given. The managers had to protect their workers, avoid severe punishment, and keep production going under massive uncertainty. Because the rules were so unbelievably rigid, planning devolved into a giant bargaining game. Enter the tolkakachi, or pushers. Managers would essentially hire these informal black market supply agents to navigate the vast state ministries. Their whole job was to exaggerate the factory's needs, negotiate for more input materials, and secure lower, much easier output obligations. The plan was no longer pure math and calculation. It was high-stakes bargaining under intense pressure.
Section 6. The deeper lesson. Beyond the Soviets.
This all builds to a point that connects directly to your modern life. It boils down to Goodhart's Law, named after the British economist Charles Goodhart. It states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Every large organization, whether capitalist or socialist, can be distorted by bad metrics. The Soviet case is just super dramatic because the central plan made these metrics central to the entire economy.
Think about your own workplace for a second. If you work in a modern office, are managers measuring software programmers purely by the lines of code they write? Well, they're going to write bloated spaghetti code. Are you running a customer support call center focused only on average handling time? Your agents will definitely hang up on complex customer problems just to keep their time down. Are your sales teams given rigid quarterly quotas? They'll sign up bad-fit customers on the exact last day of the month just to hit the number. If you are surrounded by these kinds of KPIs, you are essentially living in a Soviet nail factory. So, the absolutely crucial point to take away is this. We must distinguish output from outcome. We have to measure the true outcome, like are houses actually being built? Is the software actually working for the user? Rather than just the output, like how many nails we weighed or how many calls we took. We really have to rely on human judgment over blind, rigid metrics. Which leaves us with this final thought for you to reflect on the next time your boss sets a new KPI. Are you asking for a useful nail, or are you just asking for 500 tons of iron? Because in the game of incentives, you always get exactly what you measure. Thanks for exploring this explainer with us, and keep questioning the metrics around you.